Welcome back, everybody. Today, we'll be discussing the Jordan 1 Yellow Toe, also known as the Jordan 1 Taxi. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the Jordan 1 Yellow Toe and why that is. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even info on how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications. This way, you're always 100% updated. Furthermore, for more urgent updates like the recent shock drop that we just saw for these Yellow Toe Jordan 1s, make sure to follow Keep That M10 and also Personals for You. And of course, for early information, before these drops actually occur, Endurance has your back. Feel free to follow for Restocks. For those who don't know, the Jordan 1 Yellow Toe is releasing on September 24th, tomorrow, but Europe has already dropped these, and we even saw a huge amount of stock already drop on Nike sneakers through the shock drop, which is very relevant for today's discussion, as you'll see why later. Retail will be $180. Stock is very high on these, even for a Jordan 1 at over 200,000 pairs. In order to determine if the Jordan 1 Yellow Toe will be a fruitful hold, we will cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop, and also when shipments come in, essentially the pairs going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin we're looking at for these in terms of holding, not the retail to resell initial margin, but rather just the hold margin over X period of time. Basically, are they going to be worth your time, even if they do end up going up? But kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range they should be settling at. To begin with, again, stock for these is certainly well above average, hence this of course will negatively affect the price. However, demand is certainly very high. Don't let that low pre-sale fool you. While the pre-sale is indeed low, this of course is impacted by the fact that a good majority of pairs have already released through other regions, as well as the Nike sneakers shock drop that we recently saw. Looking at the volume of bids and sales, it's certainly very impressive. As you can see, there's a notable amount in just the last hour alone. This is essentially what you would typically see for most high-demand Jordans, and it makes sense. These have a great color blocking scheme, and most comments online regarding the tone of yellow do seem to be positive. I'm at least definitely a huge fan. Let me know what you guys think. However, mainly due to a combination of the very high stock and poor macroeconomic conditions, the demand is still not sufficient to offset these negatives. Hence, it unfortunately looks like these are mostly just personals as of now. Unless you do have no tax in your state, then you might be able to make a couple of dollars profit on large sizes with a poor margin, or if you have local buyers and you could avoid fees. But overall, yeah, these are mostly looking like personals, unfortunately. Now, regarding a specific range, prices have already seen the vast majority of their pre-drop decrease since it's the night before. This leaves the current average at about $197 for sizes 8 to 12, but of course, this is only the pre-drop average. Like I said, very low already. We normally see a notable change post-US drop. This one we normally experience what I like to refer to as the impulsivity effect. You guys should know by now what I'm referring to, as we discuss this very frequently, yet it almost always occurs to some degree. Regarding the impulsivity effect, if you haven't watched my seller hold videos before, sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after an individual fails to acquire that desired product due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 5 to 10% increase of the pre-drop prices post-drop. Now, that 5 to 10% isn't always the case, such as if a sneaker is slightly overvalued. Now, considering we already have a huge amount of stock in circulation from the Europe release and the Nike sneakers US shock drop, I believe this is, of course, negatively impacting the typical pre-sale that we would normally see. And thus, I believe that these might be a little oversold right now, especially since sneakers will have less stock than usual after releasing a ton through the initial shock drop. So, with that said, I do think that we can see a positive impulsivity effect on these, especially given their high demand. I can see as much as a 10% increase on these given their unique situation. This could potentially leave the post-drop average at about $217 sometime after all drops conclude, but remember though, this is just temporary. Now, let's discuss what prices will look like once shipments go out in that 1 to 2 week range. During this period, the vast majority of the rest of the pairs will be going into circulation. For general releases, I would typically expect a 10% decrease, but again, given the fact that so much stock is already out there, I believe it's more likely that we'd only see about a 5% increase, a 5% decrease, especially if they don't see a great positive impulsivity effect like I was expecting. listing. This would then hypothetically leave prices at about $206. And again, large sizes will remain the best, so those will still hover in the low 200 range, with the smaller sizes still in the high 100s. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, that sort of just makes these personals unless you do have good local buyers. Now that the average price ranges at those points in time are evident though, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase from the post-shipment prices or even hypothetically decrease. When it comes to these, I feel a pretty useful comparison would be the Pine Green Jordan 1 for a few reasons. For one, they have precisely the same color blocking scheme, which is the colored toe box and heel, but a white mid panel and black swoosh, two attributes of typically highly demanded Jordan 1s. Not only that, but their primary color is also a non-universal one, being green. It puts them in an area of demand relatively close to yellow, rather than say a UNC blue or a Bulls red. You might be able to argue something similar would be the Court Purple Jordan 1s, which released alongside the Pine Green ones, but I think there was much more demand for those initially, making the better comparison being the Pine Green, since those had less demand. But anyway, with that said, there is a notable difference, and that is the stock. These have much higher stock than the Pine Greens. Nonetheless, we did see those Pine Greens provide a really healthy ROI over time. Now, given the fact that these yellow toes are so low in value right now, I think that leaves plenty of room for them to grow. Perhaps not as much as the Pine Greens, especially due to macroeconomic conditions and the stock, but nonetheless, they should still be increasing after this post-drop shipment range. Finally, regarding the hold margin on these, essentially, are these actually going to be worth your time, even if they do eventually increase? Looking at where the Pine Greens are at right now, those would have gotten you a 95% ROI, considering they were selling for about $230 post-drop back in 2018. Within 1 year alone, though, they would have only got you about a 25% ROI, which definitely isn't bad, but it was really that long-term ROI that made these worthwhile. Again, I'm not expecting the yellow toes to do as well due to the higher stock and macroeconomic conditions, but I do believe they do have really solid long-term potential nonetheless, especially considering the current value of them is so utterly low. And it's precisely because of that very low value currently that I have to give these a really high hold rating, of course, as it leaves a lot of room for a really good ROI in the future, especially long term. Hence, I would rate these an 8 out of 10 hold, one of the highest ratings in a while. So, if you have some of these and realize that they're bricks, I wouldn't really panic if I were you, as the long-term potential looks pretty solid. Most importantly, hopefully all of you who do want personals are able to grab a pair. I got mine from the shock drop, and they look amazing in hand. I can tell you that. The quality is on point too. Also, just a note in general for anyone considering holding any items who do have low capital, you should never hold anything in general if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential without holding back. If you need money to go for all drops, try to sell these as soon as possible. Like always, let me know what you guys are doing with your pairs down in the comments below, since this is a discussion at the end of the day. I can't predict the future. That's just my personal analysis based on the data that I've acknowledged. We have a lot of brilliant minds watching the video right now, so I'd love to hear your notions as well. But anyway, that will conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, or perhaps if you learned a thing or two. Subscribe and enable post notifications to stay 100% updated on all hyped releases. Also, feel free to check out the links in the description below for reliable, fast, residential proxies from Kit Proxies. Furthermore, feel free to follow Endurance on Twitter for updates on the next restock or key giveaways, and the same goes for Gargantua AIO if you want to keep up with the progress or restocks. Last but not least, make sure to follow Keith Adam 10 and Personals for You. This way, you guys can stay updated on all the urgent info like I was going over today. With that though, I'll see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and of course, good luck on these, or if you already copped, congratulations.